During the 14th century BC, ancient Egypt was ruled by Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who is widely recognized as a master of diplomacy. Through his cunning exploitation of international greed for gold, Amenhotep not only maintained the vast empire he inherited, but also elevated it to a level never before seen. His incredibly successful reign rendered him one of the most admired and beloved pharaohs in ancient Egyptian history, earning him the name Amenhotep the Magnificent. Amenhotep, whose name means Amun is content, was born in 1401 BC to the rather insignificant pharaoh Thutmose IV. On the other hand, his great-grandfather, Thutmose III, was one of the most notable pharaohs in ancient Egyptian history for his efforts to greatly expand the empire through countless military campaigns. As crown prince, the young Amenhotep was destined to inherit this vast empire. The foundations for his eventual diplomatic success were laid early in his childhood through a rigorous education in mathematics, reading and writing. Literacy was a highly valued skill mastered by only 2% of the Egyptian population. In addition to learning how to write Egyptian hieroglyphs, Amenhotep was also required to master Mesopotamian cuneiform, which was the primary language of diplomacy. Education at the royal court was rigid, and adherence to discipline was of utmost importance, as evidenced by an instructional text dating to the late New Kingdom period, which states, "Do not be idle or waste your time. Do not give yourself over to pleasures that will be your ruin. Write with your hand, read with your mouth, and seek advice from those who are wiser than you. A scribe skilled in his calling, a master of education, is most fortunate. Persevere and spend not a moment in idleness, or you will be beaten. A boy's ear is on his back, he only listens when he is beaten. Take these words to heart for your own good." Upon the sudden death of his father in 1388 BC, the young prince was proclaimed Pharaoh Amenhotep III at the age of 12, becoming the 9th ruler of the 18th dynasty. Much of what we know about him comes from a series of commemorative scarabs that he commissioned during his reign. Scarabs are pieces of steatite stone carved into the shape of the sacred dung beetle native to the deserts of Egypt, symbolizing Khepri, the Egyptian god of creation and rebirth. Scarabs began to be worn as talismans during the Middle Kingdom period. Amenhotep used scarabs in an entirely different manner by engraving them with inscriptions that depicted important events during his reign and having them distributed throughout Egypt. Egyptologists consider them to be among some of the first news telegrams in recorded history. An example is this commemorative scarab announcing Amenhotep's marriage to a commoner named Tiye upon his ascension to the throne. Queen Tiye was only 6 years old when she became the pharaoh's great royal wife and would go on to become one of the most significant women in ancient Egyptian history. As a young pharaoh, Amenhotep was taught to drive the mighty war chariot and handle a bow and arrow with great proficiency. A second series of commemorative scarabs depicts the young Amenhotep using his bow and arrows to kill a total of 102 lions. Lion hunting was regarded as an effective way to demonstrate strength during times of peace when military battles were scarce. However, during his 5th year in power, several riots broke out in Nubia, a region to the south of Egypt rich in natural resources. Rebels were terrorizing the kingdom's trade routes, which called for the 16-year-old pharaoh's immediate attention. Amenhotep led an army into Nubia and swiftly crushed the rebellion, bringing a total of 30,000 captives back to Egypt. This would stand as the only military campaign of his entire reign, but would go on to prove instrumental in his eventual diplomatic success. With Nubia under control, Egypt had access to massive deposits of minerals such as gold, malachite, galena, and copper carbonate, which were vital to the empire's thriving economy. Although Thutmose III considerably expanded Egypt's territories and brought it to a position of predominance, many surrounding kingdoms were eagerly awaiting the opportunity to shift the balance of power in their favor. Egypt's greatest rivals at the time were the kingdoms of the Mitanni, the Hittites, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. Amenhotep III was notorious for the use of marriage as a diplomatic strategy. During his 10th year on the throne, he commissioned a third series of commemorative scarabs that announced his marriage to Princess Gilukepa, who was the daughter of the king of Mitanni. The scarabs record the princess's arrival with an entourage of 317 women intended as additions to Amenhotep's personal harem. This is when the pharaoh chose to leverage his hoard of Nubian gold by sending solid gold statues as wedding gifts to the king of the Mitanni. Amenhotep would go on to turn this strategic maneuver into a frequent habit. Over time, a rumor spread amongst Egypt's neighbors that the empire had a miraculous abundance of the precious metal. One particular letter from this time reads, "Gold is like the sand in Egypt, you simply gather it up." Foreign kings perceived this to be a tremendous opportunity to finance their own ventures at home. Eventually, these foreign kings were willing to trade almost anything to obtain more gold, even their own daughters. By indebting them through financial dependence and marital obligations, Amenhotep gained a significant edge over his adversaries without ever resorting to violence. The pharaoh would go on to offer marriage proposals to any ruler that he believed might one day pose a threat to Egypt. He successfully married the daughters of the Hittite and Assyrian rulers, along with the sister and daughter of the king of Babylon, Kedashman-Enlil I. The communication between Amenhotep and the Babylonian king is inscribed in the famous Amarna letters. Engraved in cuneiform script with messages between the rulers, these clay tablets were worn around the necks of the king's closest confidants and transported across thousands of miles. The royal couriers often traveled through hostile territory for weeks at a time, and due to the highly sensitive material contained within the letters, ensuring their safe passage was critical. Rulers provided their messengers with certificates granting diplomatic immunity, which guaranteed their safety during these dangerous journeys. The Amarna letters offer unique insight into Amenhotep's diplomatic prowess and his position of supremacy over foreign rulers. In this letter, King Kedashman-Enlil of Babylon, whose sister was already married to Amenhotep, sought to obtain additional gold from the pharaoh, writing, "My daughters who are married to neighboring kings, if my messengers go there to speak with them, they send me a greeting gift, but my sister with you is poor." Amenhotep humorously replied to the king by writing, "Should your sister select some gift, I will send it to you. But it's a fine thing to give away your daughters just for the sake of acquiring a nugget of gold from your neighbors." The Babylonian king even daringly asked the pharaoh to send him an Egyptian princess to marry. Amenhotep firmly refused his request, writing, "From time immemorial, no daughter of the king of Egypt has ever been given to anyone." Kedashman-Enlil grew desperate enough to suggest that a substitute Egyptian woman be sent instead, writing, "Someone else's grown-up beautiful daughter must be available, so send me a beautiful woman as if she were your own daughter, and who will say she is not the pharaoh's daughter?" Amenhotep was not only insistent in his refusal, but proceeded to turn the tables on the Babylonian king by instead demanding that he be given his daughter's hand in marriage, which he obediently accepted, writing, "My daughters being available, I will not refuse one to you. Now, as to the gold I wrote to you about, please send me whatever is on hand or as much as possible." In fact, Amenhotep deemed himself the only ruler in the world worthy of marrying Egyptian princesses. This belief prompted the pharaoh to wed two of his own daughters, named Sitamun and Iset. It is unknown whether Amenhotep fathered any children with them, but Egyptologists believe that the pharaoh's intention was to prevent foreign ruling families from ever gaining a future claim to the Egyptian throne. The pharaoh's skillful exploitation of his rival's lust for gold led to numerous exotic goods pouring into his empire. Egypt grew exceedingly wealthy as foreign kingdoms supplied huge quantities of wine, horses, copper, and precious stones. Around the same time, The empire was experiencing record harvests, which the Egyptian people viewed as a direct result of the pharaoh's divine power to bestow fertility upon the land. The increased stability allowed Amenhotep to devote his time to the arts and the construction of some of the finest works in all of ancient Egyptian history. This scarab was distributed throughout Egypt to announce the building of a mile-long artificial lake in honor of his great royal wife, Queen Tiye. Its waterways were cleverly built to connect the royal residence with the Nile River, allowing easy access for visitors. An architectural masterpiece, it was designed to ensure that fertile mud remained around the lake following the annual flooding of the Nile. The pharaoh's unparalleled construction output is often attributed to the assistance of his most trusted confidant, who held a similar name, Amenhotep, son of Hapu. The ruler appointed him as his personal scribe and architect and entrusted him with managing most construction projects, including sections of the temples at Karnak and Luxor. Amenhotep granted his architect, son of Hapu, the rare honor of building his own mortuary temple alongside his, which is a testament to the high esteem that he held him in. Similar to the 27th century BC pyramid builder Imhotep, a sizable cult following developed around the son of Hapu, worshipping him as a god of healing for over 3 centuries. Imhotep and the son of Hapu are the only 2 known Egyptian commoners to ever be deified following their deaths. Amenhotep was renowned for keeping detailed records of his reign as pharaoh, but mysteriously, all his construction projects and documentation efforts were put on an 8-year hold. During this hiatus, he chose instead to commission the production of over 700 statues dedicated to the Egyptian goddess of war and healing, Sekhmet, who is believed to not only cause plagues, but to end them as well. This has led Egyptologists to speculate that the empire was experiencing a severe plague at the time. The excessive number of statues may have been Amenhotep's attempt to appease Sekhmet's wrath in hopes that the goddess would lift the curse. It is believed that the pharaoh retreated with Queen Tiye to their royal palace by the artificial lake to survive the crisis. Amenhotep's devoutness was evident, but unlike earlier pharaohs, he emphasized his loyalty to the sun god Aten in particular. This led him to establish a new cult dedicated exclusively to Aten, aiming to elevate the deity within the Egyptian pantheon. As Amenhotep grew older, his health deteriorated dramatically as he suffered from dental decay, arthritis, and obesity. According to this Amarna letter, King Tushratta of Mitanni sent a statue of the Hurrian goddess of healing, Sauska, to aid with the pharaoh's failing health. The letter reads, "Now I herewith send her, and she is on her way. May Sauska, the mistress of heaven, protect us, my brother and me, 100,000 years, and may our mistress grant both of us great joy." It was in the best interest of foreign kings for Amenhotep to recover due to the uncertainty as to whether his successor would continue supplying them with large quantities of gold. After a lengthy reign of 38 years, Amenhotep III died in 1351 BC at the age of 50 and was entombed in the Valley of the Kings. Amenhotep and Queen Tiye had only one surviving son who was given the name Amenhotep IV upon ascending the throne, but would go on to change it to Akhenaten and become notorious for radicalizing his father's worship of Aten. Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti declared Aten to be the only god worthy of worship and banned the veneration of all other gods, including the central Egyptian deity Amun-Ra. The new pharaoh inherited the empire at its greatest height, but lacked his father's talent for leadership and diplomacy. Egypt's hegemony over foreign kingdoms rapidly deteriorated during Akhenaten's reign, resulting in an abrupt end to the unprecedented stability that his father had worked so tirelessly to maintain. Amenhotep went on to become so revered by future generations that it is theorized that the Hebrew Bible story of King Solomon was based on the pharaoh's life due to several striking similarities. In the story, King Solomon inherited a vast empire stretching from the Nile River to the Euphrates River, accumulated great wealth and wisdom, devoted his efforts to impressive building projects, and possessed a large harem filled with the daughters of foreign kings. Through ingenious strategy and calculated diplomacy, Amenhotep III brought Egypt to its greatest heights, leading future generations to forever remember him as Amenhotep the Magnificent. Consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more videos like this.